All right. And so we welcome all those who are with us on the screen this morning and all those who are joining us in a digital kind of way on Facebook or our website. We are glad you're here with us this morning. My name is Patty Agnew. I'm the pastor of these four United Methodist churches in Park County, Montana. We're the churches of Grace and Holbrook and Shields Valley and Pine Creek. And we are glad that you are here with us. My sermon today is called Wandering into Grace, and we are focusing on wildflowers, hence my background screen. So one thing that I have come to enjoy on my hiking adventures is stopping to take photos of wildflowers. Now I have to tell you, that's not always the way I've been a hiker. I used to hike with efficiency. I had a destination, a lake or a waterfall or a mountaintop, and I was always focused on getting to that destination I enjoyed it along the way, but as soon as I could. It was a kind of a direct route. However, a couple of years ago, I got a really nice camera. And when I got that camera, it changed the way I hike, because now I take much more time on my hikes to look around and notice things along the trail. And one of those things I notice is wildflowers. And I love to stop often to take pictures of those wildflowers, those sparkles of color on the trail, each with a unique shape and design, each with its own shade of a brilliant color. So around here, I love the pink shooting stars, the yellow arrowleaf balsam root, the purple pasque flowers, the red Indian paintbrush, and the white bear grass. Those are some of my favorite wildflowers I see on the trails here in Montana. And I chose this picture because now these are just sunflowers growing in a field behind my house, and maybe some people might call them weeds. I think they're beautiful, so I put this on. And this was me walking my dog one day, and I saw these. I thought, I think I'm going to stop and take a picture of this beautiful flower. Now, I can honestly say that when I was a kid, I would hike right past all the wildflowers. I was so focused on getting to my destination. However, my focus has changed, and I'm learning to enjoy the journey along the way, not just the destination. And my eyes are open then to the treasures I see along that journey. And I need to learn that in life too. I think God intends for us to enjoy every single day, every day's journey, not just our final destination or the high moments of our lives. Because there are treasures on the path every single day. And that is grace. When we learn to walk with our eyes wide open, we see those treasures along the way, and we wander into grace without even trying it to. We experience that abundant life that God offers us. So those wildflowers teach me about God. The wildflowers teach me that God loves diversity. If you think about it, God could have made one kind of flower. God could have made one kind of tree. God could have created one kind of bird and one kind of fish and one type of person. We could all have black hair and brown eyes and the same nose and be identical. But can you imagine a world where everything was the same? How dull would that be? How boring. Instead, God created a world and all the creatures in it, including humanity, with great diversity, with great creativity, with great innovation. Diversity adds so much beauty and interest to our world and to our lives. And so we discover in creation that God values diversity. So on Wednesday mornings in our meaningful conversations about race in this country, we were asked the question this week, what loss do we experience when we live in segregated neighborhoods and schools and churches? What do we miss out on when we primarily hang out with people very similar to us? And Terry's part of our conversations, and she had a beautiful answer that gave us all pause. And I won't remember exactly how she worded it, but in essence, she said, what we lose out on is a full experience of God when we live with people just like us. That is a thought-provoking statement. When we surround ourselves with people just like us, we get a truncated view of God, because our creation stories tell us that every single human being is created in the image of God. And so when we are only with people just like us, it limits the full expression of who God is. So listen again to the words of Genesis 1:27. It invites us to believe that humans are created in the image of God. It goes like this. So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. And then it goes on and lists all the other creatures that were created, the creepy crawly things and the fish and the birds of the air. And then it said, God looked over all that God had made and saw that it was very good. And so each human being is created in the image of God. All races, all abilities, all ages, all genders, all ethnicities, all sexualities, all shapes, all sizes. We are all made in the image of God. God loves diversity. And God, our creator, did not just create things all the same, but very differently. So humanity, we're not all alike. We're tall and short, we're thin and big, we're all different kind of skin tones, our voices are all different, our faces are different, our smiles are all different. And thank God that there's nobody exactly like you and nobody exactly like me. We each are like a beautiful wildflower in the meadows, in the mountains. And so in our diversity, all together, collectively, we reflect a more full view of God. And so we need to learn how to see God in each other. The more diverse our experience of humanity, the bigger our view of God. So I remember having a conversation with a mom several years back that really challenged my view along these lines. She and her husband, she was telling me, were in the process of rewriting their will or writing their will because they had a disabled child who by then was an adult but was unable to take care of and provide for herself. And so they were rewriting their will to make sure that their disabled daughter, and I'll call her Susan, would be taken care of when they passed away. And then she shared about how she was talking to her other two daughters about that. And those two daughters started fighting over who would take care of Susan when mom and dad passed away. But they weren't fighting over who would have to take on the burden or who would have to do it out of obligation. The two sisters were fighting over who would have the joy, who would have the gift, who would have the honor of caring for their disabled sister. And I remember in the midst of that conversation, just recognizing how deeply cherished that daughter was in all of her special uniqueness. And somehow in the same time, I had been challenged to think about just how God views all of us. And so I reflected and I wondered, is that disabled daughter flawed? Did God make a mistake when he created her? Does Susan have less value because of her limitations? And the only answer I could come up with was no to all those questions. Susan is different. Susan has limitations, but she too is a beautiful creation of God. She's not flawed. She's not less than. She's fully human, fully valued, and fully loved by God and her family, even though many in our society would consider her a burden and deem her less than. You see, each human being has inherent value and dignity. All are equal in the eyes of God, no matter what our uniqueness is. And so as we encounter humanity on a daily basis, may our eyes be open to see the image of God in each person, in the homeless person, as well as in the professional athlete. We see God in the drug addict, as well as in the movie star. Now, this can be challenging to see sometimes. Mother Teresa made an indelible impression on me several years ago when I watched a documentary about her life and her ministry. And I've always remembered this one particular scene because it was so challenging to me at the time. She was in one of her Sisters of Charity care homes, and she was caressing the head of a man who was all skin and bones, who was dying in his bed. And she was telling the story to the cameraman. She talked about how she had walked around on the streets of Calcutta. And as she was walking, she noticed that there was this lump of something in the gutter. And as she got closer to the gutter, she discovered it was a man. He was left to die there. He was alone. He was dirty. He was covered with bugs and trash. He was literally starving to death in the gutter on the streets of Calcutta. He truly was the poorest of the poor. And so she picked him up and she took him to her Sisters of Charity home. She washed him, she clothed him, and she fed him. And now she was caressing his head and offering reassuring words to him. Telling to the cameraman, she would say, "See how beautiful he is? I see the face of God in his face." And when she said that, I thought to myself, I don't see God in that face. I see an old and suffering and ugly man. And shame on me for that response. And then Mother Teresa continued caressing his head. And she said to him, sorry, this brings up tears for me. She said to him, "You are beautiful. You are loved. You are a special child of God." And as she did that, it helped me to see him the way she saw him. She didn't know his name, and he died a few days later. But she said she felt satisfied knowing that she showed him the love that he deserved in his final days. He was discarded literally by others. But she made sure that he knew that he was cherished by God. And so ever since then, I have really worked hard to try to see the image of God in the face of people that I encounter, no matter who they are. And it's not easy, but I do believe it's what God calls us to do. And so in Terry's sentiment, the more we experience the diversity of creation, the more we experience the diversity of humanity, the more full our experience and view will be of God. And so in these days when we're being challenged in our thinking about race, I feel God pushing me to reflect on my implicit biases, on those subtle ways that I give different value to people of different races, of different economic statuses. There's so many ways. We all have ways that we judge people. We can't escape that. It's the way we're raised in our culture. And so we need to reflect on that and to work to change that, not only in our individual lives, but in the systems that we are part of. See, the thing is, we're not the first to have to deal with this. I look all the way back to Genesis 3, beginning in Genesis 3, people divided and judged others based on different things and killed people. And so all throughout human history, we have grouped people together and we have made judgment on people, and we have caused a lot of harm and a lot of death. And so this is not a new phenomenon. This is not a new problem, but it is a problem because every single person is created in the image of God. Every single person, no matter their struggle, their disability, whatever limitations or value judgments we place on people. And so along the way, I remember in my first appointment, I lived in a small town of 800 people in an agricultural place in southeastern Colorado. And I learned, and I had grown up in LA, right? So I spent 29 years of my life in Los Angeles, 1 year in Denver, and I find myself in this town of 800 in southeastern Colorado. And from those rural people, I learned how they have such a deep, abiding faith in God. You see, they knew that some years were abundant and some years were lean. And they knew that amidst all those challenges and blessings, they knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that God was with them. And so that gave them the hope and the strength they needed to carry on through dust storms and droughts and tornadoes. And so I was deeply impacted by their deep faith. And when I was in Costa Rica, I was leading vacation Bible school for children in the poor villages up in the mountains. And I remember the deep joy and authentic contentment they had in life, despite how little they had. And so I learned from them to be less focused on the material things in life. And my gay friends have taught me the power of love, and that the most important thing is the quality of our love for one another, not the object of our love. And so as I have gone through life and opened myself up to people who are different than myself, I have learned more about myself. I have learned more about God, and I truly have wandered into grace in each one of those experiences. When I was in school, I remember learning about the melting pot of the United States. And the message was that the people of the US come from all over the world, and we're all diverse, and yet in the United States, we melt together into one pot and learn to live in harmony. And the intent of that teaching was very good. The intent that we are all equal and we need to learn how to live in harmony with one another. However, I've come to understand that there's a flaw in that teaching. And the flaw is it strips us of our uniqueness. It asks us all to kind of deny our background and to melt together to be the same. Which makes me think of my favorite Sunday school craft. So I don't know if you got to do this. This honestly was my favorite Sunday school craft. It was when we melted crayons in wax paper and made stained glass. Did you ever do that? Now there was an art to it. So what you do is you take old crayons that were broken and we didn't like coloring with them anymore. And we got a grater and we would grate those crayons And then we'd have a piece of wax paper and we'd sprinkle the crayon shavings onto the wax paper and put the other piece over. And then with an iron, we would melt it. And then it would create this beautiful kaleidoscope of color. Now, there was an art to making these stained glass windows, because if you put all the shavings down all together in one clump, and if you ironed it for too long, it all turned to a mucky brown. So you had to leave enough space between the colors and just iron it enough to melt the paper together, but not too long. And then all those colors maintained their brilliance, and you'd have a beautiful stained glass window. And I think that's true for us in life. We need to allow people to maintain their color, their dignity, their identity. And we need to learn to live in harmony with that, not strip out people's diversity. We need to learn to value and cherish what makes each person unique. And as we do that, we will have a more full experience of God and of ourselves. So I have a video to share with you. And this is, so this video is of a disabled, or you might say a differently abled dancer. Now, to be honest, it's in Chinese, so I have no idea what they're saying or what's going on, but I think the heart of the message comes through. It looks to me like she's probably had some kind of stroke, because one side of her body doesn't completely work the way she wants it to. And so as you watch her dance, I want you to reflect on how you see the image of God in her. This is on some dance competition show, so it's supposed to be the best dancers in the world and the country, and she with great courage comes onto the stage. So enjoy this dance.
Something I'm giving up on you. I'll be the one if you want me to. Anywhere
他在抓他的左手，因为受伤的就是左边的身体，全都麻痹了。
Say something, I'm giving up on you. And I'm feeling so small. It was over my head. I'm nothing at all. And I will stumble and fall. I'm still learning to love, just starting to crawl. Say something, I'm giving up on you.
不知道如果是他的父母现在在电视机前面看他这段舞蹈会是什么心情？
有一点失误，但是没关系，他的平衡可能跟他的时差有关系。但你看播音器现在完全热情。
Anywhere I will follow you. Say something, I'm giving up on you. And I
加油！加油！加油！
即使能站起来，就是奇迹。
加油！加油！加油！
As we journey through life, May we keep our eyes open along the trail so that we might see the wildflowers we encounter every day. May we stop and admire the beauty of each flower, the beauty of each human being, for all people are truly made in the image of God. As we learn to open our eyes to the diversity around us, then we will wander into grace and experience life more abundantly and God more fully. And that is grace. Amen. Well, I'm going to take a moment here